Have you ever been in one of those situations where you've got an interaction with somebody and they are just coming at you? They're being rude, they're being disrespectful, they're being derogatory to any area of your life. And then when you put up your boundaries, somehow the conversation unfolds where you end up being the one who's to blame. You end up being placed as the bully and they end up being the victim. And it can happen in the blink of an eye. And if you don't know what to look for, this can be incredibly unnerving. And it's what I call the Faultfinder victim switch. And it happens each and every day to millions of people all over the world. So in this video, I'm going to go through an example of what could happen. And we're going to break the conversation down stage by stage. Because what emotional manipulative behavior does is hide in plain sight through distraction. I always say it's like the magician. When the magician's doing the trick with the left hand, they want you to look at the right hand. It's all about distraction. So here we've got person A and person B. And person A is the one using the emotionally manipulative behavior. So person A is using a fault finder technique on person B. Person A will be criticizing their hair, their job, their anything in life, because that's what a fault finder will do. Now, in what I teach, a fault finder will rely on shame in another person. So they will do their best to get that person to focus on, say, a trauma of not feeling good enough in some way, shape and form. So they've not got the right job, they've not got the right hair colour, they've not got whatever it may be. Now, in this situation, if person B wasn't to put up their boundaries, person A would just keep going on this derogatory path. So that will be just fault finder, fault finder, fault finder. But then if person B, the target of the fault finder, wants to put up their boundaries because they just get fed up of just being insulted and degraded, what can happen then is that will put a stop to person A's attack. So then person A, if they carry on with the fault finder technique, sometimes they might just plow on through and get into an argument. But if person A wants to switch tactics, what they do is they go from a fault finder, as in you're wrong for this, you're wrong for that, to then the victim. Now the victim is the part which plays out as an emotional manipulative behavior that you've let me down. If it wasn't for you, I'd be okay. And that relies on guilt. So imagine the stage, we'll build it up again. Person A is using a fault finder on person B. They keep being a fault finder, and then person B, getting fed up of the actions that are being projected onto them, puts up their boundaries and then says, I want you to stop. I'm getting overwhelmed. I don't like what you're doing. Stop this now. The content or information in these videos is for educational and informational purposes only. And this is the switch. We'll turn around and say, I'm so sorry that you feel offended by my humor. Or I'm so sorry that you can't cope with me just having a laugh. You know I didn't mean anything by it. And I'm really sorry that you feel that way. And I feel really bad now that you're offended. So what I'll do now to be there for you is I'll stop being myself because I don't want you to feel bad. Now what that's actually implying there is that person B is the abuser and person A is the victim. And it can happen in the blink of an eye. Now, the thing with emotional manipulative behavior is it relies on a suppressed trauma emotional vulnerability. So if here person A was using fault finder to person B and person B was to put up the boundaries, that would mean that they are not triggering on a fault finder technique. But then given the fact that the emotional manipulative behavior of the victim will rely on guilt in their target, it could be that person B has a guilt complex. And it could have all been a setup. They might have been using a fault finder to trigger the person to put up the boundaries, and then person A can play the victim, thereby triggering the actual trauma of guilt in person B. And that might have been their technique all along. Either way, it is to distract a person with their own trauma emotional vulnerability. So if a person has an anxiety about abandonment, that would be the I'm too busy emotional manipulative behavior. If a person has a feeling of rejection by the group, that might be the imposer that they would use. But here is the fault finder trying to trigger shame, and then they switch to playing the victim and imply that the target of the Faultfinder was actually the bully and manipulator all along. And if person B does have that guilt complex, and then it might be that they cannot think clearly because their mind becomes awash with anxiety about how they should be there for other people and that they're a bad person if they're not, that they can literally be putty in the hands of person A. So that again is the Faultfinder victim switch, and it happens all the time. And it is to trigger either shame in another person through the Faultfinder or guilt. And the guilt is a huge one for millions of people all over the world. Emotional and manipulative behavior relies on triggering that person's emotional vulnerability so they become so distracted by their own emotional overwhelm that they become like a rabbit in the headlights and just sit there confused while the other person offloads by even more emotionally manipulative behavior. In essence, it can be like an amazing quote I remember hearing: weaponizing your vulnerability. So have you ever found yourself in that situation where you're in a connection with somebody and then they're insulting you, they're degrading you, and then somehow you end up as the abuser and they end up as the victim? And remember, this can happen in the blink of an eye, or it could be happening over months and months of conversations. So if it ever has happened to you, how did you find it? Did it catch you off guard? What did you do? And how did you feel about it afterwards? And also to ask you, did anybody else join in as well? Because sometimes people using emotional manipulative behavior can be incredibly charismatic and sway the opinions of other people. So it could be that you have done absolutely nothing wrong, you've been manipulated, but then other people have listened to the emotional manipulative behavior of the person who is attacking you and believed them over you, even though it was them that was using the emotional manipulative behavior. So any thoughts, ideas, or things that have come through for you, feel free to share them in the comments below, especially around emotional manipulative behavior, only if you feel comfortable with it, by the way. Because the one thing I find is that millions of people all over the world experience this each and every day. And the one thing is that they can feel very, very, very alone in that interaction. It can sometimes feel like it's only them that's going through it and everybody else is okay. So when other people put their comments down of what they've experienced, it can help other people not feel alone and validate their experience so they know that it's okay to feel the way that they're feeling and know that it's also emotionally manipulative behavior that's being projected onto them. And as I always say in every video, you never know, your comment could change somebody else's life for the better forever.